Welcome to The Green Rush, a podcast about the business of cannabis. On a weekly basis, Ann Donohoe and Louis Goldberg talk with the CEOs, politicians, and cultural icons driving the cannabis industry forward. This episode was recorded back in May and features Ann and Louis catching up with fellow hosts Phil Carlson and Nick Opich. Don't sit back, lean forward. Now, on to the conversation.
Welcome to The Green Rush. I'm Ann Donohoe, and today is another one of our Hostful episodes. I am joined by Louis Goldberg, Phil Carlson, and Nick Opich. Can I call you guys the Cannabis Bros, or is that weird?
Yeah, that's weird.
Okay, we'll work on it. But before we start, just wanted to send a quick reminder to hit the subscribe button for The Green Rush on iTunes or Stitcher or wherever you get your podcasts from. And if you leave us a rating or a comment, we would be ever so grateful. And don't forget to follow us on Twitter and Instagram at KCSA_cannabis. So let's jump into it. As we record this on May 14th, a huge announcement has come out of Canada. Aurora has acquired MedReleaf, making it effectively the largest cannabis company in the world. Let's talk about this. This is the first do we think this is the first in a trend of big companies starting to consolidate? And what does this actually mean for the industry?
So, and this is Phil. So, yeah, very big news. This makes these guys a dominant global player in the industry here. The proposed merger is basically these two companies combined are going to have a funded capacity of about 570,000 kilograms per year, equaling 1.3 million pounds being cultivated from 11 different facilities, 9 in Canada, 2 in Denmark. It's a massive acquisition here. So,
I mean, look, we this is Louis. Well, you all know my voice. You may not know Phil or Nick's, but you will soon. But towards the end of last year, we heard that 2018 was going to be the year of consolidation, and we've seen a lot of companies either go public or prepare to go public. And we've seen a lot of companies raise capital, but none of it has been deployed until now. And I think that this is the beginning of a significant consolidation. CNBC was talking about this deal this morning, and they put it into a little bit of context. But others were talking about this deal and said, okay, well, who's next? In Canada,
there's a lot.
There's a lot
that's out there, and with the LPs that are currently being mentioned, you have to look at like Acreage Holdings. They're another producer and distributor of medical, pharmaceutical grade cannabis. These guys did about, what was it, 20 million in sales in 2017. And they're almost $1 billion market cap. I can see them.
Aphria
is being mentioned. Organigram is another one. Hydropothecary, who we met with at MJ Biz. These guys. That's been a lot of people's thoughts.
And that's
2018.
That's just in Canada, right?
Just in Canada.
We haven't really seen, even real tire kicking or heard about real tire kicking in the United States, but it's coming. I mean,
How soon do you think it's going to come to the U.S.?
Well, I read a note today that in the U.S. alone, annual cannabis sales are almost equal to that of Netflix sales.
Wow. So soon. That would be soon. About as long as it takes for a Netflix CD or DVD to get you in the mail.
Well, digging in that a little bit further, what does this mean for the U.S.? Because this is a big Canadian deal and, on the international stage, but not necessarily for the U.S. markets. Because we can't import-export. So, what does this mean both for like the U.S. investor, but for the U.S. Consumer? Does it mean anything right now?
It does. The other big piece of news that came out this morning was that Canopy Growth announced their plans to list on the New York Stock Exchange this summer. That is a huge piece of news, and that coupled with the MedReleaf Aurora deal means that the industry is professionalizing very quickly, that the major exchanges are starting to want to participate in this and realize that they are losing both a huge source of listing revenue on the one side and then trading volumes from the retail investor on the other side and the potential institutional investors. I think this is huge news. Both pieces are huge news, and they presage a major change that's going on in the overall market.
Well, I think with Canopy, that it's going to allow these guys to attract institutional investors here in the U.S. However, with the MedRelief deal, they did a $133 million financing early in 2018, and actually one of the companies or one of the investment firms that was in on that deal was JP Morgan Asset Management. They actually did about 1 million shares in that $133 million deal. So it's, you see these institutions they have to be licking their chops at this, and having Canopy list on the New York Stock Exchange, I think you're going to see a lot of these other guys who, if they're not already in discussion with the NASDAQ or the NYSE, I think this kind of lights a fire under their ass to get them moving to, take those next steps, because the U.S. investor base, I would have to say is far greater than what you have in Canada. But it's definitely they're more mainstream investors here. And, you could see more acquisitions, like that once these guys start listing in the U.S.
And Phil, can you talk a little bit? Sorry, Louis.
In full disclosure, Aurora is a KCSA client.
So noted. Phil, can you just talk a little bit about, for people who may not understand the process? So Canopy has applied for a listing on the New York Stock Exchange. I mean, that seems to be taken as Bible right now, but if it's just in the application form, what does that actually mean?
So, they've submitted their application, so they still have to be approved by the New York Stock Exchange. I don't want to bore everybody with what the process is, but
please bore us.
Well, no, I mean, it seems like it's a done deal, but if it needs to be approved, I mean, I feel like there's been, other companies that go up against this process and get shot down.
Well, and we have spoken with the NYSE and the NASDAQ in regards to our clients that are currently here in the U.S., and they have shot them down. But they're obviously becoming. They're opening their doors, I guess, to the Canadian market. So
why do you think this is different? Why do you think Canopy is different?
Well, I think because they're listed up in Canada.
They don't do any business here, so they're not in violation of U.S. federal law.
So once it's federally legal here in the U.S., you're going to see a lot of these guys. But to be honest with you, I think you're going to see some of the companies that are not touching the plant. I think you'll see them list by Q1 of 2019 on either the NASDAQ or the New York Stock Exchange.
I mean, we saw Kronos list.
Kronos is Canopy is the first. Well, they would be the second pure play behind Kronos, but Kronos is on the NASDAQ. Canopy will be like I said, second pure play. But you have some other guys like Scott's Miracle Grow. What's the Innovative Industrial Properties, and those guys are both listed on the NYSE. So
but that's not Scott's Miracle Grow's prime business, right? They touch it.
It is their fastest growing. It is their fastest growing segment.
No, but it's not though. It took a hit. Hampton is that the Hampton division or whatever? I can't remember the name of the division. But
the lighting division, or because they have
they have
4 divisions. They have lighting, fertilizer, soil, and additional services.
What does this count as? Additional services?
I have no. Within cannabis, there's 4 sectors that they touch, and it is faster. Maybe
they're looking to acquire companies because their cannabis division isn't growing as fast as they had hoped. They're not seeing the growth that some of these other companies are currently seeing.
So, about a month ago.
Yeah. So. Yeah, we're talking about Canada. We're talking about Canopy wanting to list on the New York Stock Exchange. How much of this plays back into the John Boehner announcement with Acreage, which another client of ours, getting involved? Like we saw shortly after the Boehner announcement, Senator Cory Gardner was able to strike that deal with Trump for states' rights. Just today, legalized gambling was brought back to the states. Are we going to see a greater push towards states being able to get their own call on this?
I think it's a good time to be living in New Jersey. But
said everybody on the phone living in New Jersey.
Not me, unfortunately.
But yeah, I can see, listen, I think you're going to see more congressmen and senators stepping up to the plate here from both sides of the aisle, wanting to attach their names to cannabis, because that seems to be, you saw right after with the whole Gardner-Trump thing, or after Boehner, everything just started opening up. Schumer.
Yeah.
Well, you kind of can't swing a dead cat and not have, hit a Democrat trying to put forth legislation. But is it really going to go anywhere in this current environment? I mean, unless the House flips, there's really nothing that's going to be done.
Even if the House flips, it doesn't matter. What Boehner did fundamentally is give permission to Republicans to embrace this issue. And say what you will about whether John Boehner is late and is culpable for what's happened in the past. He is so vital to changing the perception of this industry. I really think if you look at cannabis advocacy, there's everything pre-Boehner and now everything post. And all the work that the advocates did, NORML and Students for Sensual Drug Policy, you cannot disregard, because we wouldn't have gotten to this point without them. But going forward, it most probably will be the Republicans who take this into the end zone. If NORML and all the others got us to the 20, the Republicans are going to take it in for the touchdown. And whether it's a good thing or a bad thing from a cultural perspective, from an industry perspective, scoring the touchdown is, I think, what's most important, not who carries the ball across the plane.
Well, and it's not like Democrats aren't getting involved either. I think there's definitely been a shift in leading up to the primaries this year of Democrats starting to make that as like a primary platform, especially with, for example, like Cynthia Nixon putting the pressure on Governor Cuomo to come out and fully say that he's going to support cannabis legalization. Because right now, I don't think that he's actually said that.
I'm going to be a John McLaughlin here from the McLaughlin Group on Sunday morning, and I'm going to give a prediction that the Republicans that Trump deschedules October of this year as the October surprise to try and help the Republicans hold the House. That's my call.
And the thing is, though, I've heard that before, but this was pre-Boehner, and I heard that it was a 10% chance that he does it in October. But I bet you it has to be higher than that now.
I think the only thing that's predictable is that Trump is unpredictable.
Yeah.
So, and you need to work on your McLaughlin imitation.
Predictions.
Question number one. Let's on that note, let's take a quick break. We'll be right back. You're listening to The Green Rush. And we're back. You're listening to the Hostful episode on The Green Rush. We're here with Lewis Goldberg, Phil Carlson, and Nick Opich, the KCSA cannabis team. And I am going to pivot and talk social justice issues. The New York Times had a huge article over the weekend basically dismissing the police explanation that more Black and Hispanic people are arrested on marijuana charges because of complaints that are higher in their neighborhood. The article said, quote, across the city, Black people were arrested on low-level marijuana charges at an 8 times rate of white, non-Hispanic people over the past 3 years. The New York Times found that Hispanic people were arrested at 5 times the rate of white people. And in Manhattan, the gap is even starker. Black people were arrested at 15 times the rate of white people. That is just completely staggering. What do you guys think the industry is doing, or the industry can be doing better to fix this?
So I think that the cannabis industry is well aware of what is going on, and they themselves probably can't make fundamental changes to policing strategies and community policies like that. But you look at the rates of incarceration, they're off the charts. You look at the challenges that former inmates have in getting jobs, it's absurd. The industry is well aware of this, and they are trying both at the multi-state operator level and at the individual company level to address this. But
yeah, that was going to be my follow-up on that. It's like, do they, because right now there's this disparity in that what we just talked about it with Black and Hispanics are getting arrested at this high rate, but it seems like a bunch of white people are profiting like crazy off the cannabis industry. Do these cannabis businesses have a prerogative to advocate for for these changes to get rid of these lower level offenses?
Yes. The short answer said amongst the 3 white guys sitting around a microphone and the 1 white girl sitting in California. But I can tell you that our clients, and we work with a lot of multi-state operators, are very seriously looking at issues of corporate social responsibility. And they all know that if it's not done on a legitimate, honest level, that if it's just done from a PR perspective, that people will see through it. And they're looking at issues on how to deal with expunging arrest records and providing employment to nonviolent felons, and buy one give one type Tom's type thing. And lots of these companies are talking about it and trying to figure out how to do it in a way that is sustainable and scalable. So they all know they have a responsibility, and even though they're the quote unquote suits, there's not one that I've spoken with that doesn't really feel passionate about the industry. They may have gotten into it because of the green rush opportunity, but they very quickly have gotten educated on the history, the responsibilities, and the pain and suffering that have been engendered because of the cannabis trade, that they all know that they have a responsibility.
Yeah.
So,
Go ahead, Ann.
no, I think 2 things. I think one, it is up to the industry to do everything that it can to rectify this, and part of that is lobbying and treating this like a real business and a real industry, and understanding that all politics is local, and you're voting for judges, you're voting for your district attorneys. These are all issues that you can ask people, where do you stand on this issue? How do you effectively police low level marijuana offenses? I mean, these are questions that we as citizens can be asking our representatives, and put their feet to the fire and really demand that they answer, and that and that answer is satisfactory to us. And if it's not, we vote them out. And I think the cannabis industry does a good job of that, but I think they can be doing better. I mean, there's such a lack of representation at these big companies, and I don't necessarily think it's very top of mind for them.
I don't know. I mean, I look at I don't know. You look at Senator Gardner from Colorado, right? Mm-hmm. He is a Republican and a pretty conservative Republican, but on this issue, he's really good, and I think that this issue, because of the data around it, when you have more than 90% of the country favoring medical legalization for medical cannabis, more than 60% of the country favoring legalization for adult use, what other issues poll like that? And as the industry becomes more visible and more powerful, there will be a legit sense of urgency to court the cannabis voter, not just the NRA voter. But
I think it gets lost in, Louis, I think it gets lost in the legalization versus, the adult use legalization argument. So yes, we want to vote for, politicians who, are where that's on their agenda, but we don't look at, the local, state, and county officials who are enforcing the law.
I think you're right. I think that it has to be, it's hard to do it all at once, right? You got to get it legal first and stop having, look, if it was legal, there would be no arrests. If it was legal, we would see, if it was legal, the blacks and Latinos and Asians and white people would all not be arrested.
What about people that are currently incarcerated?
So that's a huge issue, right? That's the wiping the slate clean, so that, especially if they're nonviolent. If they're violent drug offenders, that's a different issue. Right. But if it's nonviolent, selling a dime bag or possession.
But is it going to be case by case basis? Like how that?
No, isn't Seattle, doing and states or cities like Seattle and San Francisco doing broad brushstrokes to release these low-level nonviolent offenders?
Yeah, I mean,
you got to say there's like a bank robbery or something, and the guy had an eighth in his pocket, and he didn't go to jail.
I think it's considered violent.
The guys or whatever, he had 10 pounds in his car or whatever it is, but he, and the judge waited one way or the other.
No. If as long as it's a nonviolent offense, there is a move to expunge those records, right?
Yeah.
The very first thing that has to happen, though, is it has to be legal.
Yeah.
Although, it's like,
I think you have 7 years before that happens. 5 years.
5 years. I think you're right on 5.
I mean, I think people are tired of waiting. So
yeah, but think, I mean, so, and well, first of all, what do you think? Well, since Phil and I came up with a number, what's your number?
I mean, you've got to
Or you
definitely wipe these clean.
I asked Ann a question.
Oh.
Wait, what's my number for what? For
when it's going to be legal?
Oh, when it's going to be legal federally?
Yeah. Phil said 7 years, then he went back to 5. I agreed on 5.
I'm going to say 4.
I'm going to go 3. I'm going to be the most optimistic here.
I can name that tune in 3 years.
What were you saying?
Well,
So,
no, I was going to say, so let's talk about what, if it were to turn tomorrow, what does that look like? What happens to all of the multi-state operators? What happens to, the people who are incarcerated? I mean, that is such a huge sea change in the federal status here. And that's kind of scary. While it's great, that's kind of scary too, right?
There'll be a line down the street, across the street from us.
but if you think about it, so there's these two competing tensions in that question. Between, what if it went legal tomorrow, right? The one tension is, well, nobody's getting arrested anymore, and we've won. The other side of it is that there are lots of companies, whether we represent them or not, there are hundreds and hundreds of companies that employ hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people who exist in the light, but in the light of legality in Colorado or Arizona or Washington State or wherever. But they also exist in the shadow of the federal illegality that keeps out those big super tanker companies. These multi-state operators, from a retail perspective, would face real competition from liquor store chains and pharmacy chains, and what happens to them. Now they would all say, hey, we're specialized, we'll survive, but it's hard to see if Amazon wanted to take its Whole Foods chain and spin off a version of a cannabis dispensary. How the heck can these companies survive? And then there's the producers, right? These are people. What would the number? How much is Aurora and MedRelief going to be able to produce collectively?
1.3 pounds.
1.3 million pounds annually. So if you're ConAgra and you make hundreds of millions, if not billions of pounds of corn a year, how hard is it going to be for them to commercialize that program and then take out all of the big producers all at once?
Well, they'd have to buy somebody who's going to actually do the producing or whatever.
Okay,
they're not. It's not going to just.
I got it, but so they'll buy the lead growers or they'll just buy Aurora and then blow out everybody else, right? So there's these tensions. Like, for the people who are in the industry, they don't want it to get, from a business perspective, fully legal until it's a more fully developed industry. But on the social justice side, how do we let these people rot in jail? And how do we have people continue to get arrested? It's like there's these real tensions.
Yeah.
Well, that, and also showing up on like their arrest records for when they try to get new jobs. It's got to help the people that are already out of jail too.
Like, it's got to expunge their records.
Yeah.
It's I don't know. I mean, I'm torn.
I mean, you've got me dreaming of like a Whole Foods adding a deli style thing of cannabis in the back corner. It's like, let's legalize it tomorrow if that's the case.
Next to their soaps and potions aisle.
No, it'd be right next
in a
to
little cannabis locker.
Any grocery store that sells wine and liquor could sell cannabis. It will be regulated similarly. So
Was that Shoppers up in Canada, isn't it? Aren't they the?
They're going to.
Yeah,
it's
Shoppers
not yet.
and Loblaws, right?
Yeah. So what do you think, Ann? I mean, if it happened tomorrow, what do you think would happen?
Kind of chaos. I mean, because if I'm sitting in jail, I'm a little pissed. Why wasn't this thought out before? Why, I guess that's my first thought, is that, the social justice side of it. The business side will sort itself out. I mean, we're a capitalist economy. I'm not worried. But I think that, from an arrest side, like, so how do you, and that's a big change when it comes to like the cops and the prosecutors. I mean, it's a wholesale change. So how do you implement that so quickly? So I don't know. I just think not enough. What's that?
The cops don't want it. They want it legal. They don't want to deal with
they don't want to be it's a headache for them. But I think like, so without proper procedures and proper, I think it would be complete chaos, but good chaos, I guess, at the end. If there's a thing as good chaos.
Yeah. So Phil and I last week were at the MJ Biz conference in New Orleans. And it was interesting. I found to be interesting because.
Actually, Lewis, can we go to a break before we talk about that?
Yes, of course.
You want to take us to a quick break?
So let's take a quick break. We'll be right back on the Green Rush. And we are back. Thanks for coming back to listen to this Hostful episode. You've got your little jars of joy here and Anne in California.
Am I not a part of the jar of joy?
It is part of the jar of joy. So as I was mentioning, Phil and I were in New Orleans last week for the MJ Biz conference. And one of the things that I noticed was the attendees were definitely the professional cannabis market participants. There weren't as many looky-loos kind of wanting to poke their head in and see. What did you see?
Yeah, I agree. I think the one in Las Vegas is certainly that's the biggest one.
It's the CES of cannabis.
It really is. But the one in New Orleans was similar to the one that I went to in DC last year. I guess you had the same kind of players, but even with Louisiana not really being a full rec state like you have in Nevada.
It's barely a medical state.
Yeah,
there's 5 dispensaries in Louisiana, or 6 dispensaries.
But
in Louisiana.
even in DC, given that it's legal there, it's like I thought it was the same type of attendee that was in DC.
It was the professional audience. Yeah. It was people.
We heard that it was a lot of people from the Midwest and a lot of people in the Northeast. So I don't know if that's indicative of something.
We met a manufacturing company. We were out having a drink, actually having a hurricane, and we met these guys who were like chemical chemists, and they were like
chemical chemists.
Well, they were like.
Was that on their business card?
It is exactly, and it was like Professor Bunsen Honeydew and Beaker, but they were like serious, like hardcore agricultural chemistry scientist dudes who make all their money in another industry, but we're focusing on the extraction side, a really niche, small component in the overall cannabis industry, but like a very specific way of extracting THC and CBD. And they were all excited about the industry. It was really fascinating.
I'm so excited about science getting involved in cannabis. I think it's going to do amazing things. Like we work with companies that do gene editing and stuff. And ever since I started really working with you closely on the cannabis stuff, it's like, oh my gosh, with gene editing, you can just delete one little part of the DNA of this plant, and you can make something really, really cool out of these cannabis plants. So as much as these growers are really doing stuff right now, we've talked to a lot of different growers that are able to grow a ton, grow really great stuff.
Right.
But there's still so much more that I think can happen. So
as these CRISPR or Talon,
that
would be crazy.
I think you can make the most powerful cannabis plants ever.
It's 112% THC. So
we don't let Nick out a lot.
And now you understand why.
New Orleans was good. It was good to see that there was definitely some new companies that we hadn't seen at the past 2 previous shows. But I'm interested to see what Las Vegas brings in November. But there's other conferences coming up.
There's Toronto.
The Toronto one, and that's going to be with Benzinga conference right after that. And then you have New West Summit coming up in October. So there's definitely the NCIA one in San Jose is what? Is that next week?
No, Cannabis World Congress is coming up.
Cannabis World Congress is in 2 weeks.
In 2 weeks, right.
All right, so we are at the point in our show where we do puff, puff, pass, and Ann and I have done this before. So it's your guys' turn. Each of you has to do 2 things that you love about the industry, and this is supposed to be rapid fire, not 45 minutes, and the one thing that's driving you nuts. Nick.
So the first thing that I love is the Democrats using this as a chance to make it part of the strict party platform. You're seeing Kamala Harris get involved. You're seeing Cory Booker get involved. Cynthia Nixon on the ground floor. They're saying no, for the future of the Democratic Party, cannabis legalization is on the forefront. So that's really awesome to watch happen in real time. The second part is just the amount of business deals that are happening around cannabis is really fun to watch. It's seeing this industry being professionalized right before our eyes. We're getting the email updates or talking with the reporters that this is all happening. So as like a big deal like Aurora and MedReleaf happens, it's like, okay, we're getting one step closer to that legalization. So you're saying 5 years. I'm thinking 3 years, because who would have thought 3 years ago that a $5 billion cannabis deal would have gone down like this?
Okay, and the pass?
The pass is that I still think minorities are just getting completely overlooked when it comes to legalization. I don't think that they're getting a big enough voice, or they're not involved enough in the industry, and I think it's a lot of white guys in suits making a ton of money off the backs of the people that are in jail or unable to do anything about it now.
Phil?
Two things that I love about the industry: the conferences. And also I like seeing how these companies are, creating their brands, whether it's the dispensaries and how they're forming their own identity, and you have like the other, like the edible brands like Kiva and Dixie, and how they're, I'm interested to see how that is going to shake out and who's going to be the winner in that. But it's good to see these guys at the early stages here.
Yeah, it's really cool to watch this happen.
And all the different products that are coming out there that, whether they're chocolate covered blueberries or Listerine type strips. It's crazy. It's definitely crazy.
And your pass?
The conferences.
Which I get as well.
There's too many out there, but they're fun to go to. But it's like,
and they're good for networking. It's tiring.
It is definitely tiring.
So that is it for this week's episode of The Green Rush. I'm Louis Goldberg. Today, Ann and I were joined by Phil Carlson and Nick Opich. If you can remember to please subscribe, rate, and review us on whatever podcatcher, whether it be iTunes or Stitcher or other things that I don't know about, which there are a lot of. You can also follow us on Instagram or Twitter at KCSA_cannabis. You can also email us. We'd love to hear from you. Any questions you want us to address, anybody you want us to talk to. One of the really cool things I think Ann and I have discovered is that pretty much anybody that is in the industry wants to talk with us because you guys all are listening. So who do you want us to talk to? Shoot us an email. And with that, you can come and say hi to us at the Cannabis. Thank you, Nick. Nick just passed me slyly a note, but you can say hi to us at the Cannabis World Congress and Business Expo here in New York at the end of May. We're out.